Here we are for the penultimate time at the US Open. It is finals time. We have come this far, and the final should be a cracking one between Naomi Osaka and Victoria Azarenka. Osaka, the 2018 champion, and Azarenka, a two-time former finalist, and both of them came through really impressive encounters to make this final stage. Welcome back to the tennis vlog. If you are not yet subscribed, please hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the happenings on the channel. I dread every prediction, but particularly this one. I'm not going to lie, I think it can be looked at as pretty 50-50. I think that on paper, Osaka would definitely be the favourite coming into this, but with the form that Azarenka brings in, it makes it incredibly difficult to call. I have, however, had quite a think about it leading into this, which may help me, which may not, but I'm not going to sit here and dither in front of you. I've thought through things a little bit just so it can be slightly more concise. So let's start by going through, as we do, the paths of both of these two to the final. I'll talk about their semi-final matches in a little bit of detail, and then we'll get to the business of looking ahead to the final, the kind of play to expect, and the prediction that I'll be laying down. So let's kick off with Naomi Osaka. Let's start with the seeded player. Azarenka unseeded and Naomi Osaka seeded number 4. She hasn't had a smooth sail to the final as far as her set and match results go. I think when you look at her quality and the tennis that she's produced along the way, she has been fairly convincing and has got better as the tournament has progressed. But in the early stages, there were one or two hurdles that she had to jump. So she was taken to 3 sets in the first round by Misaki Doi, regrouped for a 6-1, 6-2 win in the second round over Camilla Giorgi, big hitter. Marta Kostyuk posed a problem in the third round, another player that was looking to move in and hit big, but Osaka steered through that one after Kostyuk got a little bit tight in the deciding set. Annette Kontaveit was her opponent in the 4th round. I feel like I always butcher her name, which is inexcusable because she's been around for years, but Osaka coming through against the number 14 seed 6-3, 6-4. She looked pretty sound against Shelby Rogers as well in the quarterfinals. Rogers was trying to pack the first punch. She was trying to bring the game to Osaka, was trying to get on top of her before Osaka could really get going in the exchanges, but Osaka adjusted accordingly, and as close as the match felt at times, it ended 6-3, 6-4. It did really feel like Osaka was in position to take advantage in the key moments all the way through. But it was a little bit more scary for her, I think, in the semi-final against Jennifer Brady, the number 28 seed, who came into this tournament in great form. She won the WTA event in Lexington, first tournament back after lockdown, and was utilizing the conditions under the roof. I think for both of the women's semi-finals that we saw, both of which were incredibly high quality at moments, if not for one of them all the way through, the roof and the faster conditions that it brought with it were utilized, because Brady and Osaka, I don't know if this would have been their game plan otherwise, but both of them came out hitting the skin off the ball. They were bludgeoning their shots. They were going toe-to-toe, and I was deeply impressed by this match because it's not a rare thing to see two women going after the game like this. Actually, you know, the big hitting power baseline game was the thing on the WTA tour for a number of years. The pace that they were able to generate and sustain was really impressive, but I think the most impressive thing was the way the rallies were ending. When you're playing with that amount of pace on court, a lot of the time you're going to lose control and there's going to be some unforced errors, as we saw actually, and I'll come to that later, in the Serena Williams versus Victoria Azarenka match. But these two were soaking up each other's pace. They were rising to the standard of the opponent, and a vast majority of the rallies were finished with either winners or forced errors, which says a lot about the quality they were bringing to the court. I almost feel like I got my analysis a little bit off coming into this match because I thought Brady's best bet of getting past Osaka would be to try and be versatile, to use the drop shot to stretch Osaka out and make her move. And actually, she got pretty close with the power game, but the conditions were different. She used the roof, she used the indoors, and in the end, it wasn't enough. As fantastic as she was, as well as she served, as well as she did to hold her composure after playing a phenomenal first set and then losing it on a tie break where she kind of malfunctions, she did eventually drop away. And once again, it highlighted Osaka's focus and her extreme mental strength when it comes to the back end of these tournaments, the bigger stages. There are just moments where it looks like she's never going to give way. She was finding the angles when she needed to. It was actually a shock when she missed her off forehand on break point down. There were a minimal number of break points. I think 2 break points in total, maybe, in the first couple of sets. Brady missed the only one of the first set that it was hers, with a backhand return on a second serve, so that was incredibly costly for her. But Osaka faced break point again in the second set, missed the off forehand, and she kind of stopped for a minute as if she was in shock, not just me, because she doesn't miss those kind of balls, especially when she's got her teeth into the rally the way that she had. And it just shows the pressure that Brady was being able to assert, and how she was making Osaka have to play those extra balls and be so consistent. So Osaka did really well to outlast Brady. There was a lull from Brady at the beginning of that third set. The rain got really loud at the time, which must have been quite distracting, but Osaka was not distracted, and she capitalized in that moment and eventually came through 7-6, 3-6, 6-3. And it's another of those matches where you look at the scoreline and you just don't understand how close it was. That 1 point in the second set where Osaka missed the forehand on break point, I think that single point decided the whole outcome of the set. And yeah, it was just a lot closer than I think that scoreline on the surface suggested. But at the same time, Osaka just mentally supreme. And I've said it throughout this event, the best players know when to peak. I've said it outside of this event as well. I've said it always. The best players know when to peak, and Osaka's sense of timing makes it tough to bet against her. I was watching this match, and the way that Osaka would continually rise when it looked like Brady was really causing issues and was rattling through service games. I was watching how she would start to mix things up when she really needed to, when she would go for the shorter angles, etc. And I just thought, how can you bet against this girl? She's never lost in a Grand Slam final. She has been my front runner all the way through the tournament, and I thought if she does come through this match, which she eventually did, I don't know how I'm going to pick against her in the final because she just looks zoned in. And then Victoria Azarenka won, and I was thrown into a very big problem. So Azarenka, fantastic tennis that she has produced, is into the final, and a first Grand Slam final for her since 2013, which was at the US Open, where she faced Serena and lost in 3 sets. She got a little bit of vengeance, actually a lot of vengeance, in that semi-final. She righted some past wrongs, I think, but let's just take a quick look at her journey to that match with Serena. So, didn't drop a set in her 3 opening matches against Barbara Haas, Aryna Sabalenka, the number 5 seed, and Iga Swiatek. I've said it before, Swiatek came out firing, Azarenka stayed secure and worked her way through. Did the same against Karolina Muchova, didn't flinch when she dropped that opening set and got her game going to come through 5-7, 6-1, 6-4. And then she was up against Elise Mertens, the number 16 seed. I think a lot of people expected that one to be quite close. Mertens had used some great firepower to do some damage and taken out Sofia Kenin, who was the number 2 seed, or was she the number 1 seed? No, number 2. Pliskova was number 1. But Azarenka, after a sticky 2 or 3 games to open up, absolutely soared through that one, 6-1, 6-love, didn't look in trouble, and looked incredibly relaxed, which was a surprise then when she came out against Serena Williams looking quite tentative. It was the first time I've really seen that from her this tournament. when you look at the stats on paper, maybe it's not such a surprise. Now, to quickly double back to my preview and predictions video for the semi-finals, some of you will remember that I predicted Serena to win this match, and I predicted her to do it in 3 sets. I don't have too many regrets over that. I think it was a decent call to make at the time because this is what I thought might happen. I thought that Serena might come out and feel like she was playing a match from back in the day against an opponent whose game style she enjoys, who she's beaten 18 times previously, who she's occasionally thrashed, and Azarenka might come out thinking about her previous records against Serena at Grand Slams. She'd never beaten her in 10 previous meetings, and at the US Open itself. And it did have a real feeling I felt in that first set, which Serena won 6-1, of Azarenka playing her record against Serena and the head-to-head as opposed to playing Serena herself. I saw a lot of comments throughout that first set about how outrageous the level was, how phenomenal it was. People were even saying that it surpassed the level of the semi-final played previously, which for me was the highest quality match of a women's match here at the US Open that I've seen so far in terms of the level from both players. I don't want to take anything away from Serena. I think she came out with a great mentality. I think she came out knowing what she had to do and playing like it was a 2013 match, going for those early winners, clamping down on returns, going for the corners and not really giving herself too much margin for error. And I think she did a good job of making Azarenka feel flustered and making her feel her problems on serve. The one place where Azarenka has looked vulnerable this tournament, I would say, is on her serve. Occasionally she's throwing in the double faults. We even saw a few at the back end of this match. She struggled a little bit with her toss sometimes, and Serena was able to expose that early on and get herself into a comfortable scoreboard lead. But once that's out of the way, you reset. And the thing that Azarenka has done with regularity at this tournament is accelerated throughout her matches. There hasn't really been a match where she's dropped off during it. She's always either started well and finished well, or started okay and progressed towards her best tennis for the back end of the match. And I don't think Serena was quite ready for that. I think that for Serena, in those early stages where everyone was saying, oh, fantastic level, it was a terrific contest and it was big hitting. But I did tweet this last night. There is a difference between huge hitting and high quality tennis. And the hitting from Serena and Azarenka, aided a little bit by the roof, as in the previous match, was stunning. Absolutely huge. The power was difficult to control. And you could see that because as much as Serena was hitting some world-class winners, she was sprinkling the unforced errors in between. And at the beginning of the match, because Azarenka was a little bit of a deer in the headlights, she was a little bit flustered, she wasn't able to take advantage of that. But when they got into the second set, she did free up, she won a couple of key points, and she started to stay on top of the baseline, assert herself. Serena was finding it more difficult to read the direction on Azarenka's shots, and the fact that Serena wasn't able to get the points done quickly was exposed. Because back in the day, what made Serena such a phenomenal force, and I'm not saying she's not one now, she's still fantastic, but she struggles to get across the line in these later stages of a slam for a couple of reasons, I feel. One is that players have seen others beat her and there's not so much of an intimidation factor and they feel more at ease to play their best tennis against her. So she does get some really tough matches at the back end of majors. But another reason is that back in 2012, 2013, arguably her peak years, she was in every match, she was winning a large percentage of her points within a few shots, whether that was aces and unreturned serves, whether that was 1-2 punches, whether she'd stretched her opponents out for a quick finish. She was winning a lot of quick points. And as well as she played in some of the longer rallies at the beginning of the match, Azarenka kept going and she kept stretching her out and she kept asking the questions. And in the end, Serena just wasn't able to find enough finishing shots. Now, I do have to mention that in the second game of the final set, Serena did go down heavy on her ankle. I think it was said that she pulled her Achilles or something. It was difficult to see at the time. That might have been more of a distraction than anything when she got broken in that second game of the set, but she said herself that did not alter the scoreline or affect the outcome of the match, and I would agree. Azarenka on that day, and it's not often you can say this about players against Serena, or it didn't used to be back in the day, but Azarenka, once she'd found her stride, too good, because mentally she didn't flinch. Maybe there was a little moment of precarious tennis in the last game when she double faulted, but she closed with an ace. And that just showed her journey of progression throughout the match, because she started looking iffy on serve, and then she closed with a bomb of a service winner. So I think that was hugely impressive from Azarenka, and as much as I understand why I predicted Serena, I think that Azarenka's kind of shown me a warning sign there not to write her off, because I've watched her all the way through. I think from the Swiatek match, I've watched all her matches in depth. I've been seriously impressed, and I did just think that Serena's record against her might have the final say in the semis, and it didn't, which makes it really tough coming in to face Osaka, because on paper I feel that Osaka is the favourite. She's never lost in a Grand Slam final. Her stats on the tournament are looking pretty good, and her mentality, you just can't question it. She knows exactly when to peak. She is fantastic, and she seems built for these events, but Azarenka is not confined by rules at the moment. She is a law unto herself, and having written her off against Serena in the prediction and then her coming through, it makes it really difficult for me to think about writing her off again. Let's have a quick look at the head-to-heads between these two, just for a bit of help. So Osaka does lead by 2 wins to 1. Azarenka won that only previous meeting at a major. That was at the Australian Open in 2016, and it was a thumping from Azarenka. Hard courts, Grand Slam, Azarenka won 6-1. What I will say is I'm always a little bit skeptical about results from a handful of years ago when it concerns a player like Osaka, who I think is still only 22. So she was quite young in 2016, and she didn't really make her breakthrough until end of 2017, beginning of 2018. So as much as it shows that Azarenka has the game to dictate her rounds on a faster surface, I don't think you can take a tremendous amount from that and say that Azarenka is therefore favourite coming into this. That's just inaccurate, I think. The 2 meetings since have come on clay. Both have been won by Osaka. They were 2018 and 2019, so Osaka won comprehensively 6-love, 6-3 in 2018, but that was a pretty dire year for Azarenka. She struggled to get any momentum going. She struggled to be able to get on court. As I've mentioned in previous videos, she's had a horrendous few years with custody battles, being held back, not being able to even get on a practice court, a match court. And 2018 and 2019 were still tough years for her, trying to get her confidence back, trying to get her rhythm back and her momentum back. And she did make a tougher time of it, Azarenka, in their most recent meeting, which was at a Grand Slam, French Open. Osaka won that one 4-6, 7-5, 6-3. I was having a look at some of the highlights from that one just to refresh my memory and kind of see the patterns of play. It shows that these two will go toe-to-toe, and it might well come down to the mentality, which is, it makes it difficult because both of them have had a great mentality here in different ways. So Osaka has won the last 2 over the last couple of years coming into this, but for Azarenka, you know, she's born again here in New York City. She's taken her pre-tournament form into the US Open. She's riding the wave of momentum. She's not writing herself off, even when she's a set down. Even when she's having trouble against the opponent's repertoire and style of play, she's thinking her way through these matches and fighting her way through. And I haven't seen so much fight from Osaka. I think it's been more of a sustaining of her level, but Azarenka's had to kind of work through her options to come through. So both have been mentally impressive for different reasons. And we're drawing near the point where I have to make the prediction on this one. The only obvious weakness really for Osaka to rip into with Azarenka is that serve. And actually, if you look at their stats on the previous match, Azarenka ended her match against Serena with a higher first serve percentage than Osaka did against Brady. And as hard as Osaka was hitting, that serve was an issue at times for her as well. The number of times she had to throw her toss and catch it again. She was getting a little bit edgy when she was having to put a lot of second serves in play. And as much as I would say it's difficult to see Osaka breaking down in rallies, it's incredible with Osaka how she can hit so cleanly and with so much power, but with so much control and the feeling that she won't miss. What kind of lost my train of thought. As good as Osaka is and as strong as Osaka is off the ground, I would say that Azarenka is the better returner of these two. I think she's made a point during this tournament of getting up on top of the baseline and cracking down on second serve returns. And if she can do that to Osaka, and Osaka's putting a lot of second serves in play, there won't be much that Osaka can do about that. However, there is Osaka's sense of timing again, not just within a match, but within a tournament as a whole. And that's what's made her such a force to be reckoned with in Grand Slam finals, because she's made for these moments. She knows when she has to bring her best, and I would be expecting her to bring a much higher first serve percentage to this final. So it's a really tricky one, really close, as you would expect slam finals to be. I feel like I say this a lot, but particularly with these two, it's such a shame we didn't get that Cincinnati final, because I think that would have really helped us know what to expect coming into this one. It would have been the same conditions as well. I think what's interesting to note is that Osaka's last two victories, her last victory against Brady, and then her last Grand Slam final victory against Petra Kvitova at the 2019 Australian Open, they were founded on her being able to mentally outlast her opponents and to be able to keep hitting strong when they eventually broke down. There was a little chink in the armor and she capitalized. That's going to be more difficult against Azarenka because of what I've already mentioned about Azarenka gaining as she goes. She doesn't break down towards the end of a match, she gets better. And that's going to make it difficult for Osaka if this goes down the wire, because I do expect this one, with the form they both bring into the final, to be the first 3-set encounter that we've seen in a US Open final for some time. This one should be going the distance based on the mental and physical ability of both these women at the moment. It's all about whether Azarenka can keep this mentality going. I think the no crowd situation should help her, because that will take away some of the occasion. It is a mental battle for her because she's been into US Open finals previously and not won any of them. And surely that would be at the back of her mind in some shape or form. But when she comes out and there's no crowd, it's a little bit less like a Grand Slam final and a little bit easier for her to relax. We've seen her with her legs crossed at changeovers, meditating, eyes closed. She's just really got that head game under control. And her happiness off the court, she's even spoken about it, it's showing itself on the match court, as opposed to 6 or 7 years ago. The result on the court is not the be all and end all. She goes off the court and she has something else, and therefore she's not putting as much pressure on herself. And at the moment there's no reason to believe that that won't carry on into the final. So I've got to make a prediction here. I think the first set is going to be key, because Naomi Osaka has never lost from a setup at the US Open that I'm aware. But at the same time, with Azarenka gaining throughout a match, those records have to end at some point, and I can see her coming back to get it done. But I do think, just in terms of this one potentially being a long one and breathing room that's needed, first set could well be key. I think that I'm going to go with it in this way, a similar way to how I predicted the Australian Open final when I called Kenin to win. When it's really close for me like this, and I feel like it's close for all of us with this match in terms of calling who comes out on top, if I think one of the picks is more risky, but there are enough legitimate reasons to go with it, I will take that prediction. And for me, my head feelings coming this was that Osaka should win based on her records on paper, based on her mentality at the back end of Grand Slams, based on the way that she rarely backs down in rallies, based on her intelligence within the rallies to know when to slow it down, to use those shorter angles, and to just keep the play going and going and going. But Azarenka has a lot in her repertoire as well. She doesn't really miss at the moment when she's moved inside the baseline, and the mentality is there. And I've said time and time again that I've been convinced by Azarenka through this tournament, so it would feel wrong to predict against her 2 matches in a row when she's played this well, based simply on the fact that Osaka is mentally strong and hasn't lost a major final before. It's got to be easier to knock her off now when she's nearer the beginning than when she gets a few major finals in and is starting to build up even more self-confidence and mental strength. So basically, on paper and in theory, this should be Osaka's match to win, but Azarenka is a law unto herself at the US Open, and if I picked Azarenka to win and Osaka won, I'd think, kind of saw that coming, but it was worth taking the risk. But if I picked Osaka to win and Azarenka won, I would absolutely kick myself. So on this occasion, I'm going with the risk. I'm going with Victoria Azarenka to win the US Open for the first time, and I'd say that she does it in 3 sets. And that is now done. I could technically have delayed this and put it off. I could have filmed this tomorrow, but YouTube has been taking its time processing these videos, and I thought the quicker I do it, the quicker it's up for people to watch who didn't make it here live. And I can't really add much to what I've said, I don't think. So that's my call on this one. And I think both women have played tremendously well in this tournament, and hopefully it is a 3-setter because that's the kind of level that they've been producing so far. So thank you very much for watching. Do leave a comment and let me know what your picks for this match would be and what you think of my analysis, whether you agree, whether you disagree. I will be back one final time at some point tomorrow to preview and predict the men's final, which hopefully will be a little bit of an easier call than this one. I am annoyed with myself at how much time I did spend going back and forth because I had thought ahead of this stream that I had to be bold and go with Azarenka, but just looking at Osaka's stats and her composure, it's tough to bet against, but it is what it is, and we shall see how it turns out. So hope you enjoyed this, hope it was worth your time. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you at the next video.